are here to discuss what is happening in and with Sudan. Now, for anybody who has been following, at least cursorily, this particular tragedy in Sudan, you will note that for the past year or so, just over a year, there's been a significant civil war, and there's been different troubles before that, but we're talking about in excess of 15,000 people reportedly slain, and I'm sure it's much more than that at this moment in time. It has been reported as of a few months ago that over 8 million people have been displaced in the country, of Sudan, which represents the largest internal displacement issue in the world at this moment in time, brothers and sisters. And so as well as that situation is exacerbated by issues of famine, issues of starvation, and it has been reported that Sudan represents also the world's largest hunger crisis, with over 25 million people requiring assistance. Right, this is significant numbers, significant crisis taking place in Sudan, and it gets very little coverage in mainstream news. Now, no disrespect to the people in Gaza, you know what I'm saying? All of the reporting on Gaza is deserved, right? And all of these things, but the numbers, just on numbers alone, what is taking place in Sudan is just a far bigger, affecting a far larger group of people, and so therefore it is ridiculous that this particular crisis is not receiving the amount of media attention that it deserves. But my brother, I think it would be wise to begin with a brief overview of the history of this particular conflict. I've been in the Pan-African community in the UK since birth, and it was regular to see members of the Sudanese People's Liberation Movement operating among us. So we're not completely green to the issues. And then 2011, the split occurs between what is today Sudan and what is now South Sudan. Let me just say the name of the ancestor John Garang, who was an ancestor of significant note and respect among us during those times. And so we know the history is baked into that period of time, although there's slightly indirectly now because of the separation. So what has been taking place? Let's begin really from 2011. And give our viewers a context. Now, obviously, feel free to touch on before 2011 as where necessary, but particularly to contextualize this particular crisis. What do people need to know to understand what is happening at the moment?
I'll go slightly before 2005. So, Sudan was the site of some of the longest civil wars in the whole African continent. So we had 2 civil wars. The basis of the civil war was that when the British and the Egyptians left, all the administrative roles were given to the Northerners, were given to Muslims, and were given to people that self-identified as Arab. And we can get to that later. But that's just. But so of course, the South, which was economically neglected during the colonial era anyway, had hardly any schools, etc., was aggrieved by this. So the first civil war started. I think it ended in the 70s, and then there was a peace agreement, and then General Numeri came into power, and under pressure from the Islamists, that Omar al-Bashir came from, they're called the National Islamic Front, but they're better understood as part of the global Muslim Brotherhood movement. People don't know that about Sudan, that the Sudanese, Bashir, Tarabi, they're part of the Muslim Brotherhood movement. So Numeri started off as a socialist leftist, and then under pressure from the Islamists, went to right-wing Islamist, and tried to tried to implement something called the September laws, which, just to simplify it, was Sharia law across the whole country.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Sudan is one of the most ethnically, linguistically, you could even argue religiously diverse places in Africa.
Hmm. Hmm.
So to try implement not just Sharia, but a strict Saudi influenced
Right.
interpretation of Sharia on
Yes.
people that are animists, people that practice traditional beliefs,
Hmm.
Christians,
Hmm.
people that are Coptic Christians, all these
Yes.
groups is obviously
Yes.
a recipe for disaster.
Yes.
So John Garang, a young soldier at the time, was like, "No, we're going back to war." Yeah.
Yes.
So obviously they went to war.
Hmm.
John Garang is very charismatic, as if anyone
Yes.
ever. For the viewers that don't know, I'd suggest you go. There's a book about him. There's also
Hmm.
many speeches. But the
Hmm.
thing about Garang that was distinct is he
Hmm.
didn't preach separation.
Yes. Yes.
He preached one Sudan, Sudan
Hmm.
free of religious, racial
Hmm.
discrimination, tribal
Yes.
discrimination.
Yes.
Um, so he said we will have a separate Sudan if we can't achieve a one Sudan. Then he
Hmm.
went to Khartoum. Obviously, the numbers about this are disputed. He went
Mm.
there and he saw millions of people there to greet him. Yeah,
Mm.
and he
Mm.
thought, "Oh, I don't need to be the president of South Sudan. I'll be the president of Sudan as a
Right.
whole." People
Hmm.
believe in this idea of a one Sudan. You
Yes.
know,
So remember, just to clarify for those who are not aware, Khartoum is the capital. Yeah.
yes, in the north, in the
In the
north,
north. Yes, in the north of
yeah,
Sudan. Yeah. Go ahead. Hmm.
in what's considered Republic of Sudan today, but would have been considered
Yes.
north in the north-south
North.
divide.
Yes. Hmm.
Um, so yeah, there was a comprehensive peace agreement. He was the vice president.
Hmm.
He was going to call a referendum,
Yeah.
but as the most popular man in South Sudan, whatever he
Hmm.
said the country should do, the country would have done.
Hmm. Well done.
And
Hmm.
there's a great documentary on Al Jazeera about this. I suggest
Hmm.
everyone watches it. It talks about the assassination. Well, it basically calls it an assassination, because John
Hmm.
Garang died in a helicopter crash.
Yeah, helicopter crash. Yeah, coming from
Um,
Uganda. Uh-huh.
yeah, exactly.
Hmm. Hmm.
But in the documentary, it says Garang was staying in President Museveni's house in Uganda.
Hmm. Hmm.
He then was good to go on a trip in Museveni's private helicopter.
Hmm.
Before he went on the trip to the private helicopter, the
Hmm.
the I don't think it's even a fear. I think it's documented.
Yeah.
Various European and North American ambassadors visited him one by one, basically saying, "When you become independent, this is what we want. When we become," and he apparently told them one by one, "Yeah, I'm
Mm.
not sure about this whole independence thing. We
Mm.
can get rid of the Islamist government and we can unite
Yeah.
the whole Sudan." And then
Right.
his helicopter crashes.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
It's blamed on Omar al-Bashir and the Islamist government,
Yeah.
because obviously it was a terrible regime. So
Hmm.
I can understand how people would draw that conclusion. A
Yep.
referendum happens in the high 90% because their
Yep.
liberation hero was killed. Everyone
Hmm.
votes for independence,
For
uh,
independence in South Sudan.
and then
Yeah.
in South Sudan. And
Hmm.
the two figures who, again, this is rumors that were allegedly involved in the assassination of John Garang. Two of his
Hmm.
juniors now become president and vice president.
Hmm.
Yeah, and then they start fighting over the oil.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's
Yep.
that's more South Sudan. Now,
South Sudan.
why that's important for what the story of North Sudan is
Hmm.
because when South Sudan became independent, between 70 to 75% of the oil revenue was taken with it.
It's gone. Hmm.
So this corrupt regime in Khartoum, which was stealing the people's money, but still
Hmm.
building a bridge, still doing a little bit of infrastructure,
Hmm.
now could only had enough money to steal. Yeah.
Hmm.
So here comes the economic crisis,
Right.
protests happening, protests happen, and then there's a revolution, end of 2018, twenty
Yep.
nineteen. Now, the important
Hmm.
thing about the revolution, it was half a revolution at best. That's being generous.
Hmm.
You can't have a revolution against a military dictatorship and
Hmm.
keep Bashir's generals in charge of the governance of the country.
Yeah. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So it wasn't the people's fault. It's the civilian people are protesting with no
Yeah.
guns
Yeah.
versus an army and
Yeah.
a militia force with guns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So initially, Omar al-Bashir became stepped down, and then he got replaced by his vice president, Awad ibn Auf.
Mm-hmm.
Awad ibn Auf became into power. The people were like, you think we're stupid? We're going to carry on protesting. He resigned. He
Yes.
resigned. Burhan came in. People
Yes.
then people then occupied the military HQ, saying, you think we're stupid? We're not going anywhere. But when they occupied the military HQ, the Rapid Support Forces, with assistance from the Sudanese army, gunned them down, killing
Yes.
over 150 people on June the 3rd, 2019. And
Mm-hmm.
then that basically just was the end of the revolution. So then what
Yes.
happened is the people were like, okay, we don't have guns, they've got guns. We're going to enter a power sharing agreement. They
Right.
entered a power sharing agreement with the army and the RSF.
Mm-hmm.
And the army and the RSF clearly don't want civilian rule.
Yes.
And then, predictably, the army is 150,000 personnel.
Mm-hmm.
The RSF
Mm-hmm.
is 100,000 personnel.
Mm-hmm.
Predictably, these guys turn on each other about who's
Yeah.
going to control what, because I could go into more detail about it, but
Yeah.
basically, foreign backers, foreign entities back each side.
Right.
So during the Saudi-led war on Yemen, it was Sudanese foot soldiers that were used in the war. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the Sudanese army was was led in the battlefield by Burhan.
Yeah.
The RSF was led in the battlefield by Hemeti.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at the time, the Saudis and the UAE started to have their own little splinter. So they're
Mm-hmm.
backing different men. So the Saudis are backing Burhan,
Mm-hmm.
RSF are backing Hemeti. And
Mm-hmm.
then it becomes, oh, Sudan's in a mess. We can get something out of this.
Yeah.
Strategically, we have the port of Sudan, which is
Mm-hmm.
they've got. Remember the Suez Canal wars. Djibouti has all these military bases. The Red
Yes.
Sea, port of Sudan. Russia wants a naval base there. It's a
Yeah.
very strategically important place. Then you have
Right.
Darfur, which has the gold mines, some of the
Mm-hmm.
largest gold mines in Africa.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
UAE is where gold goes, illegally smuggled. I think something like 90% of all illegally smuggled gold from Africa ends up in the UAE.
Yeah.
So it now becomes a proxy war, yeah,
Yes.
a proxy war between the army and the militia group that the army created to quell
Yes.
rebellions in Darfur, Nuba Mountains, Blue Nile.
My brother, thank you for that overview there. Extremely important information, yeah. And the context, and thank you for the context that you provided in terms of prior to 2011 as well, and the breakaway of South Sudan. It's worth noting, brothers and sisters, that whilst many Pan-Africanists supported the people of what is today South Sudan in terms of the atrocities that were being committed against them. When the separation was announced and independence was declared, many people questioned it because, as Brother Ahmed has said, even though John Garang and others were seeking to keep Sudan together, yeah, it appeared to be the case that the American government had an interest in this separation, right? And so it is considered to be the case that the separation of South Sudan from Sudan was actually in fact orchestrated by the American government, yeah, and its intelligence forces, yeah. So that's another subject for another time. We will do a show on South Sudan and the civil war that is currently taking place in South Sudan as well. So do stay tuned for that.